Welcome to Sexy Jobs with Julia Novus. I'm Julia. Since graduating, I spent a lot of time having coffee chats with people from loads of different industries. In this series, I ask the people with the sexiest jobs for both career and life advice. Today's guest is my multi-hyphenate best friend, Laura, who is a nutritionist, a chef, and a small business owner. Welcome, Laura.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
I feel like I just dropped like the label. I was like best, and then I'm
You
like,
almost
okay,
took it back, but
I've committed.
might as well
Okay.
stick to it.
So yeah, I've known Laura for a really long time. She's also Brazilian. She's living in Brazil right now, but we met living in London. And I'm a huge fan of her, but also a huge fan of her work. So I was really excited to have her on. Laura, how would you define a sexy job?
How would I define a sexy job? Honestly, I think a useful one. Not that all jobs aren't useful, but I think one that actually impacts people in like a tangible way. Something you can hold with like your hands. I don't know, there's something sexy about creating or fixing something that's real, in my opinion.
All right. And Laura, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and your multiple job descriptions and titles and multiple endeavors?
Yes, of course. So currently I own my cookie business here in São Paulo, Brazil. It's called Bodo, B-O-D-O. And I basically do everything myself. So production, product development, branding, marketing, videos, the whole thing. It's a mix of creative chaos and a little bit of spreadsheets, mostly on the creative side.
And would you say that you have a sexy job?
I mean, I think society would define it as a sexy job. I think people have something with like chefs and people that actually know how to cook. And I mean, I don't consider my job sexy, but if other people have my job, I would consider them sexy because of their job. So I guess yes.
You're getting the behind the scenes, and I feel like maybe that's like the peek behind the curtain that
Yeah,
spoils the magic a bit.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I met Laura. She was still at university,
Yeah.
and she was doing some like private chefing things, and I've been a big fan of her work since forever. So I think when I was writing the original Sexy Jobs article, which maybe you came from that, the first thing that came to mind for me in terms of people that I wanted to interview were Laura, Claire, who was the previous episode, Hillary, which was the first episode. And all of these people, I think a big thing for me that defined a sexy job was they were really an identifier. I considered, when I'm introducing Laura to someone new, I always say my chef friend Laura, and
Yeah.
that's always kind of the first thing that I go for. So I think also my friend Laura, who I call for fashion advice and life advice. So multiple things like we have very similar styles, though we're living in very different places with very different
Yes.
climates, as you can see if you're watching on video. But I'm also on the regular calling her for fashion advice. So
A little bit of
truly
everything.
a multi-hyphenate. So kind of your current role, what do you do? Kind of what does that look like day to day in your business? So with Bodo and I guess, if any nutrition aspect plays in and also any kind of the marketing aspects of your job.
Yeah. So I basically work every single day. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, I think you kind of get used to not having days off, even when you do give yourself a day off, because you always have something that you have to do. But so my business opens from Tuesday to Sunday. I only close on Mondays. But so I'm basically in production like all throughout the week. But I work from about 9 a.m. until 5, which is when I stop doing deliveries. But yeah, mostly like in the kitchen, really. I'm doing productions and, baking cookies as I get the orders, but also the marketing side. I mean, I've kind of built the whole brand by myself. I did get someone to do the initial design, but nowadays I don't really have anyone helping me on that side. So I think even like video productions and anything social media, like I'm always doing that. So even when I finish my quote unquote 9 to 5, I do also go into that side of like, I don't know, spreadsheets and, scripts for videos and campaigns and product development as well, which is, I think, takes a big amount, like a lot of time because it's a lot of testing and a lot of, you have to really be up to date on what's trending and what flavors people are looking for. I think it's a really fast-paced business and people get really bored. So seeing the same thing all the time. And I think, yeah, basically it's just a little bit of everything, but mostly focused on production, which is what takes the most amount of time.
All right. And I'd say it's a pretty creative role that you have both on the product development side and then also on the marketing side. So you're doing the branding, you're doing the campaigning, but also, and this is the part that I'm so sad I'm not your neighbor, because they're getting like all of the testing.
Exactly.
So much someone can eat. But I think, you're having seasonal products coming out. So you did special things for Easter. I don't know if you're coming up with something for Christmas, if that's like a spoiler.
Yes.
But sort of you have like these two creative avenues that are, both creative jobs, but they kind of touch in very different areas. So like, where would you say that your inspiration comes from for both the like marketing and branding side, but then also for the product development side? I know you have your latest flavor, I think was the most you thing ever.
Yes.
So it was a matcha lemonade. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a matcha lemonade, like filled with lime brigadeiro filling inside a matcha cookie.
Like Laura has a matcha lemonade every single morning. And so like there I can probably guess where the inspiration comes from. But in general, where would you say you're getting inspiration for both the branding side and also the like product development side?
I'd say product development. I mean, I think I do travel a lot, and I think I get a lot of inspiration from that. I think being in Brazil, it is a place where, the food and culinary scene is huge. But I think in regards to flavors, I think there's a lot of things that, get really trendy or get more famous in like the US and Europe before it actually gets here. Matcha, for example. I mean, we've seen matcha in the US and Europe and other places around for a while, and just now in Brazil people are getting more used to that idea. And I think here people, at least from what I see with my clients, people tend to be more closed-minded, I think, to different types of foods. And so I think I get my inspiration a lot from traveling and experimenting with new flavors and new different cuisines as well, like trying to get inspiration from like Asian cuisine to Brazilian cuisine, which is also, like two completely different things. But I think trying to combine everything is kind of like my mindset when I'm trying to create something new. And in the marketing aspect, to be honest, I don't know if I have like a specific answer for that, but I think I've always had a very clear vision on what I wanted Bodô to be. This kind of minimalistic but cool vibe, kind of running away from the classic like baby blues and baby pinks of like bakeries that we usually see. And I think having a color like red, which is the color of my brand, like really represents kind of what I'm trying to. I think having a color like red, which is the color that represents my brand, really gives a vibe of something strong and something, unique. I think, I just kind of going off of that. And I think if you see my Instagram as well, I try to kind of add in humor as well, which I think people, at least from what I hear, people really like. I think it kind of breaks that, product all the time and, trying to sell. I think it's a bit of a different approach to getting people's attention, for people to notice my brand.
And I definitely, at least from a consumer side, with small businesses, I think a lot of, at least when I'm supporting a small business, I'm quite interested in who's the face behind that. And I think that's something you do really well. And especially when Bodô was launching, it was people and I think that's the thing with the podcast and the Substack and all of this, of your first clients or your first viewers or your first readers are going to be the people and so it's kind of, I think obviously you have a product at the end, and when I'm plugging the Substack, it's something less tangible. But I think when I have to sell it, I'm like, well, if you like me as a person and we get on well, like I think you're going to like the Substack because it's the most pure version of me on the internet, and it's something it's very edited and it is curated, and I'm not going to be saying the same things that I probably am going to say after several drinks at the pub.
Right.
But kind of there is an interest inherently on the person who's behind it.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit, what was your relationship with cooking like as a kid, and how did that evolve? And I think the brand and everything, but I think Laura and I think food. Like you are a foodie through and through. So how did that kind of develop?
Yeah. So I've always loved food, not necessarily cooking, but I think everyone in my family at least says that I had a surprisingly adventurous palate as a kid. And I think my family has a big thing for cooking. I mean, it was always something that kind of brought everyone together, and everyone gathered around the kitchen, around the table. My grandma had a huge role in that. She kind of taught me a lot ever since I was a kid. I mean, she always used to bake little cookies and a bunch of cakes and everything and bring me along. And it was always something I was interested in, but I don't think I ever thought about it as a profession, or at least I never imagined it could be one. And it wasn't later until I actually went plant-based that I started getting really, really into cooking, because I went from being a huge meat eater to, cutting half of the things that I used to have in my diet. So I wasn't sure what I could or couldn't eat, and how I could replace the things that I stopped eating with new things. And I think it led me to experiment with a lot of different foods, and that's when I really started to get into cooking. So that lifestyle change kind of made me more involved in the kitchen, and that's when I started realizing how much I actually enjoyed being in that environment and creating, and also sharing what I made with the people that I love. And I think still to this day, that's what brings me the most joy.
So yeah, could you talk a little bit about your kind of university into professional trajectory? Laura, I'll let you expand, but she studied nutrition, and then she did a plant-based course at the Cordon Bleu, and then she was staging here at London for, I think, a plant-based chef.
Yes.
And then you went on to open your own business. So you kind of, and along the way you were kind of testing the waters with different things, and she was doing kind of these like smaller like catering events and kind of really curating experiences, right? Like she started hosting these dinners, and it wasn't just the food, it was about the whole experience.
Yeah.
I think supper clubs are getting really popular, and I think a lot of people are kind of really, there is a real like demand for that kind of content. I see with like Wishbone Kitchen and Isabel Heinkins, and you see kind of, again, it's food as an experience. I think especially if people are trying to unplug and disconnect, and I think there's a real value being placed on kind of being present and the offline.
Yeah.
But could you talk a little bit about like your trajectory going from, a nutrition background to a kind of gastronomy background into starting your own business, and what was the thought process behind all of that?
Honestly, I don't think there was much thought going into it. Yeah.
I reach out to Laura, and I have had several conversations on what am I going to do with my life, which is a recurring theme. I think I'm
for both of us
and beyond. So yeah, I think coming from someone who's also, I think you're a couple of years ahead of me in the figuring things out scale, but you're a real like North Star for me when I'm like, I'm sure things will work out and I'll figure out what I want to do. So yeah, could you talk about like that transition and going from that nutrition background, and kind of also how all of the things that you've done kind of contribute to your current position, and how all those kind of puzzle pieces fit together?
Right. I think if you look at everything that I've done on paper, it all looks so random, but I think it genuinely makes a lot of sense in my head. So right after graduating high school, I went on to do 1 year of communication in the US. And while I was there, that's when I went plant-based. And I think my whole idea of my professional life changed around that time. And I didn't love living there. And around that time also, my parents moved to London. So that's when I got really into nutrition, and I decided to pursue my bachelor's in human nutrition in London. I started, as Julia also said, while I was doing my nutrition degree, I started doing hosting dinners and, trying to experiment with different things to test out what I actually liked and what I didn't like. I think we talk about a lot of things that I did that I do like and I do enjoy doing, but I think there was a lot of things that I didn't enjoy and that I didn't keep doing, which I think is also important to talk about. But yeah, so then when I finished my nutrition degree, I went on to do a plant-based culinary course. And I think during my uni time, I always wanted to do that course. I was really into cooking, and it was kind of like a dream of mine, but it was always during my exams, so I could never do both. So it was a really, really big accomplishment for me to be able to do that after uni. And right after I finished, I started working at a plant-based restaurant in London. It was a great experience, honestly. I think I learned more than I ever thought I could working in a restaurant. And at the time, it wasn't something that I think I wanted to keep doing, but it definitely is something that I would love to do again. Because I think, there's something really great about sharing and being able to bounce off each other and learn off of each other. And I think I was in a kitchen with very, very experienced chefs. It gave me so much opportunity to, not only learn techniques and different recipes and whatever, but also how to go about a life in the culinary world. And I think they took me in that way and gave me a lot of advice, which I still take with me till this day. But I'm kind of going all over the place, but I think it's making sense. And then once I stopped, so I finished my culinary course. I was working at a restaurant, and then I decided for some personal reasons to move back to Brazil. And while I was here, I also decided to start a master's in marketing, which has always been something I was interested in. But I think with the nutrition and more culinary side of things, I wasn't really looking at that as an option at the time. But I always wanted to do something after to complement the idea of, you know, opening up my own business and being an entrepreneur. I'm a very creative person, and I think I've always had that mindset with like design and everything that I've always loved. So I did my master's, and while I was doing that, that's when I opened Bodo, which was hectic and crazy, but it was also really, really good to do that while I was doing my master's, because I think a lot of the things that I was learning, I could apply like right away onto my business. So I think what you said, like how does it all tie together? I mean, the nutrition aspect of it, it gives me a very, obviously I'm selling cookies, so it's not the most nutritious thing, but I think it gives me an idea of what ingredients to use and what's, you know, the best way I can give people a product that calm.
I think also, if you mind, I'll jump in. We were talking before we started recording on kind of work and that like Christmas is approaching, and we are very like aesthetically driven in Brazil, and there's a big concern on like how you look, and a lot of people seem to be on diets right now. And then you also have this giant wave of like GLP-1 injections and you know, Ozempic and everything around it. And so like you have, I think, from the combination of like the marketing and understanding a consumer, but also from a nutrition standpoint of understanding a consumer. And so kind of you have this very, I think you're able to look at your business from multiple directions, right? So you have Laura, the nutritionist, who's someone who's kind of, you have this innate knowledge around food. And also I think there's this perspective of, I think nutrition is a very holistic approach. And so I think you're not selling a diet cookie. And even though your cookies are plant-based, they're not kind of advertised as plant-based or vegan. This is just something that they happen to be. And this is something that aligns with your personal kind of food philosophy and life approach.
Right.
But you have this product that is indulgent at the end of the day, and it's a treat, and it doesn't shy away from that. But I think there's an acknowledgement of this is a moment that you're having, and this is something that like can coexist with the rest of your diet.
Right.
And it fits into your life. And so I think you can kind of approach this from the marketing perspective, and also the nutrition perspective, and also the like chef foodie perspective of, I think it's so important to create things that you consume. I'm always like, I have friends who aren't big readers, and they're like, do you think I should start a newsletter? And I'm like, well, like if you're not reading newsletters, probably not. In the same way that I'm not, you know, hugely on TikTok, and I use it to, I'm on Instagram Reels, so I see trends 3 months late. But, you know, I'm not going to become a TikToker if this isn't, you know, something that I consume. And so I think coming from someone who's like delving into that culinary space, you're someone who's so curious about food and so kind of open and so excited. And so I think it was such a natural transition of you're creating something that you really enjoy, and it's kind of, you consume, I think I see you with food the way that I kind of read, and I'm always, it's innately critical.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm very self-critical, so I think that's
so you have this giant, like, whenever I'm reading something, and it's in part the literature student in me that will never go away, but it's kind of, okay, why does this work? Why do I like it? And you're kind of pulling it apart. And that's, you know, whenever we go out to dinner and I see you, it's okay, like these flavors work together, and you're not just like, this is good. The way I am sometimes, I'm like, oh, like this is a lovely dinner. You're like looking at that from a very, I think, clinical perspective.
Yeah.
And the way that you're able to look at that is so fascinating to watch. And then subsequently how that kind of comes out the other end through whatever you end up producing.
Yeah. I think a good example of that is like, whenever at least I think of like a therapist, like if I'm talking, like if I have a friend who's a therapist and I'm like ranting about something, I'm like, is that person like judging me, or like, Are they considering like taking this in as a session? I think it's kind of the same thing, like obviously in very different areas, but I think I kind of use I'm used to dissecting things as, you know, not just an experience like, oh, this is really good food. Like I actually, it's almost like a research every time I go out to dinner and try different foods. Like
It's a write-off.
It is, yeah, but it's like field study for me, so it's great because I eat great food and, you know, I'm learning along the way as well. So
Yeah. That kind of, did you always want to start a business, or was that something that kind of came later? I think sometimes you meet someone and they have that like entrepreneurial spirit from day one. I have friends in high school who were like selling stuff, or like in middle school and they were selling friendship bracelets. So like I think some people you're like, okay, yeah, they're definitely going to start their own business. And then sometimes it comes from seeing a gap in the market or finding something that you're really passionate about. So kind of how did you come to the point where you're like, okay, I want to start a business. That's the next step.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of had that entrepreneur mindset. I see it in my mom as well. My mom, I mean, has had so many businesses in her life, and I think I got it from her.
Step.
Yes, please.
We're doing like your entire family is going to come on.
My mom is a sexy job. Like, I would love that. But anyways, I think I've always had that mindset. And, you know, as I've said before, I think I've always been very creative. I remember when I was a kid, I used to sell like postcards that I would like draw for my family. And I would do like it was like a regular sheet of paper. And I would just do like a tiny balloon at the bottom. And I would sell it to my family for like $15 each sheet. And they would pay for it. Like, maybe that's why I actually believe
prices. Like that blind faith.
I mean, thank you to my family, because I think they made me believe that I could sell a product if I really believed in it. So I think I've always had that mindset. But I also did see a huge gap in the market here in Brazil. I mean, I lived in London for almost 5 years, and I think the vegan scene in London is incomparable to what it is in Brazil. I see it evolving in Brazil. I mean, I've been plant-based for over 6 years now, and every year that I've been here, I see it being more accessible and more present in the market. It is still something that comes a bit later. So in London, I mean, you go anywhere and you will have options, and they're not just like, oh, a random salad. Like, you will have good options, and
like
I think
someone
that's
thought about this, and it's
exactly
not just like you can have fries and maybe a Caesar salad with the dressing on the side, and then you don't have the dressing.
Exactly. So I did see that, especially with sweets. And I think that's why I chose specifically cookies, because in London I have a couple of cookie brands that I'm absolutely obsessed with. Julia, you probably know this.
If you want to give some shout outs for the London listeners, I know Creme does
Creme
an incredible vegan cookie.
They have this double chocolate cookie, which almost tastes like a brownie. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I think I did see a gap in the market because there were options here, but they weren't good quality, using good ingredients.
I think it's also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think I see this whenever I come to Brazil, and I think there's certain things in Brazil. I will say the kind of supplement diet food market in Brazil is so advanced because, you know, that is the market. And so definitely, like, if you want a protein bar or like protein style, everything has protein and all of this. And I genuinely think that these products in Brazil are very well done, and they're kind of, in comparison to what I can get here, very good. But I think there is this kind of idea of veganism or being plant-based being kind of a health trend and a bit of a fad. And so I think a lot of what you find is, you know, it's vegan, gluten-free, this, and it's sold as a health product and not as just like a treat.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it's exactly what you said. I mean, I'm not gluten-free. I'm not anything else but plant-based. And I think a lot of the times people use it to make this product that tastes healthy. And not that they aren't good, sometimes they are, but I don't think that was the idea that I wanted to go about. And as you said, I think the supplement market here in Brazil is way more advanced than in a lot of other places. I mean, there's a brand now selling orange juice with protein, and it has like 20 grams of protein per serving, which is absolutely insane.
We keep joking that, like, I have a friend who works in a tobacco company, and she's like, the protein vapes are coming. Like, give it a couple of years.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, you're going to be, like, you ruin your lungs, but you're going to be jacked.
No, seriously. But I think people here, it is a bit hard, I think, breaking through that. But I also think I have a strategy. I hope people don't judge here. But I don't say my products are vegan because people have this
there is a preconceived
idea, like that it's gonna taste vegan or it's gonna taste worse. And that's so outdated, I think. And it's a bit ignorant, to be honest, because I think people don't have a lot of access to things like that here. And in the best way, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring products that, taste good. I say they're lactose free, so that kind of attracts people here as well. But yeah, something that, can break those barriers and reach people that aren't just vegan. I mean, 90% of my clients aren't plant-based. It's a very interesting market to get into, but you also have to be very careful because I think the health scene and fitness here in Brazil is very specific and very different to how it is in London, for example. You do have to be aware of the environment that you're in and take that all into consideration when you're launching a product.
Okay, so more specific on your job today, what would you say are the biggest challenges that you're facing, both right now and then I don't know, like if you're thinking about scaling up or kind of the future of Bodo, but what do you think are the main challenges that you're dealing with right now?
I think the main challenge that I deal with today is the fact that it's a bit lonely. I do everything by myself, so it's a bit hard to disconnect and not be able to, what I was talking about, of the experience that I had in the kitchen, like you can brainstorm, you bounce off of each other, and I think having that exchange is something that I miss a lot because I'm a very people person and working by myself can be a bit lonely. But also on the side of scaling up, it is a bit hard as well because, now I'm trying to get into stores and sell the cookies in different stores and, have something that's more like a fixed thing because around the time of New Year's, for example, everyone's dieting, everyone stops eating sweets, so that's a time that I know I'm not going to have as many orders. And I think not having that consistency in my job, like it does depend on what I do and how I market it, but also it's not 100% in my control of how people decide to live their life or diet choices. But I think it's hard trying to understand that and dealing with the low times as well, because it can be a bit frustrating.
And on the flip side, what would you say is the best part of your job or the best parts of your job right now?
I think the freedom is something that I thank God for every day. I mean, getting to create something that exists only because you made it is very gratifying. So I think that's like my top thing, that I can look back and, everything I've built up till this day, it's because I did it, by myself, and makes me very proud to be able to have that. It's kind of like a portfolio of only good things that you can look back at. But I think the freedom in the sense of, being able to take time off. And for example, Julia knows I just spent a couple of months in London to stay with my family because I needed it. And I knew the business was kind of in the couple months that I could, take off because I knew it was going to be a bit slower. Having that, I think you have to be careful also because you might want to take time off all the time, but I think a little weekend trip here, a little time off there is something that I really appreciate, being able to, plan my life in that way without having to ask permission, and give anyone any satisfaction as to what I'm doing.
So we've talked about this before on like choosing an unconventional career path or taking like a very non-linear way to get where you are today.
Yeah.
And both of us do have the luxury of being very young, but also having that support system.
Right.
And what do you think influenced you to kind of be in a position where you can take more risks because you have somewhere to fall back on, both from a kind of safety net sense of, family,
yeah.
But also I think, and this kind of, I was a huge fan of your work and a really supporter of what you were doing early on. And now I've had the privilege of being on the receiving end of that, of kind of having that positive feedback and having kind of people who really believe in you and what you're doing and engage with your work.
Yeah.
But what do you think, because I'd say maybe not a super kind of straight line and
yeah.
not super traditional, what do you think were the things that influenced you to kind of take more risks? And now this is a question for me as well in my current life stage, but the things that kind of took you to giving you, I guess, the courage to take that step when you don't really know what's on the other side.
Right. I mean, I definitely think it's a non-linear path that I've had up to now. But I think it's probably the fact that I never really saw a traditional career as something that I wanted. Not in general, but there was not one career that I would, that I aspired to have. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor. I don't think I ever saw that for myself. And not having that like specific dream, I think helped me explore different areas to figure out what I wanted. And I think that was really important for me. I think I have a personality that I get very bored when I do something that I don't like. That side of myself has made me, I think, brave enough to go after what, gives me joy and what makes me wake up in the morning excited to do something. And not every day, because that's not realistic in any sort of job, but I think obviously my family. I mean, I've had the most supportive family behind me, and my friends as well. I mean, Juliet, you are one of the first people to like say
I am the
anything.
fan club president.
Exactly. No, I always say, I'm like, if there's one person that I truly believe loves anything that I will do, it's Julia. Like, I think having that support from people that, I love and admire, and it really gives you the courage and if it doesn't work out, at least you tried, and that that's maybe not something you want to do again, or you might try again, and that's fine too. But I think once you take a few leaps and you do survive, I think you start to trust yourself more. So I think that's kind of what helped me not have such a traditional path.
And what would be your advice for anyone who wanted to go into your area, be it kind of from the entrepreneurial perspective as well as the kind of food side, and also maybe someone who's thinking of doing a career pivot earlier on, but I think for someone who's, and if you're not watching, I'm pointing at myself now, who's not sure kind of what the next step is, and you're figuring it out, like what would be your advice for someone who's in this position?
I think honestly, the best advice is just to not wait until you feel ready. I think you just have to go after what you want. And I think I know it's cliche, but we never truly feel ready to do anything. And I think if you're going to wait until you have that feeling, you're not going to have it. We are perfectionists, and we keep like looking for something that's going to always help us along. But I think just go for it and try it out, and you're going to learn along the way. You're going to mess up, and that's fine too. Looking back in the last year, I opened Bodo a year ago, and I think there's so many things I would have done differently, and that I have done differently when I got the chance to. So I think just start and keep going, because I think anything that you can do and you put your time and effort into, it'll work out. But I think if you're going into something food related, I think the best advice is to taste everything like 15 times, because honestly, you can't have like enough trial and error. You learn more by tasting than reading, but also do a lot of research, because it's not as simple as it might seem. And I think I got a bit surprised by that once I opened my own food business. So I think, yeah, I would have loved to hear those things when I first started.
It's such a good one. And honestly, like roping in the food one, even if like, I think you learn so much by doing. And I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was like, oh, it's so cool that you're like doing this podcast and you're writing, and like, you're not embarrassed. And I'm like, of course I'm embarrassed. Like it wears off. And I think at least for Substack, it's gotten to the point where it doesn't get to me anymore. But I used to black out like after posting something. Yeah. And you're mortified. And I think that's a good sign. It means you care.
Exactly.
I think if you didn't give a crap, then it's like, okay, whatever. I don't care what happens here. And I think everyone I've spoken to who kind of has taken a risk, and I think with a level of exposure, it's embarrassing. And if you're doing something different, right, it's embarrassing. Yeah. And you do it embarrassed anyways. And I think one of the saddest things is like when people say, oh, I wish I could do this. And it's something so within their reach. And maybe this is previous episodes. Claire came in and she's all about like getting rid of limiting beliefs. Yeah. In the least preachy way possible. I think she's just like the most self-confident person I've ever met. But it really is this thing of like, yes, I'm embarrassed. And of course, Laura and I have spent probably like an hour trying to figure out tech difficulties before we started recording. And you get frustrated, but I think you roll with the punches.
Yeah. And as you said in the beginning of the recording, I think when I first started, I did have to be the face behind the brand. And that was the last thing that I wanted to do. But I think it was the best thing I could have done. And I was embarrassed. I would literally, it was like sending a risky text to Crush. Like I would post a video and I want to throw my phone against the wall and never look at it again.
I used to say, I would rather have someone, I would rather have a nude leak and someone has seen me naked than I've had multiple people come up to me and say, oh, I read your Substack. Yeah. And now I'm really flattered. And I had an alumni event for my high school this weekend. And I had multiple people come up to me and say this. And now it's so fun and I'm so flattered. And it really is it has brought so much connection to my life because there's a level of exposure and vulnerability that people want to do the same with you. But in the beginning, I was like, this is horrible. People that I don't even know all of these, all of my insecurities and they know about my dating life and these things where I'm like, I can't tell this boy I'm going out with because he's probably going to turn into content. And so, it's layered.
No, but I mean, we've had this conversation before as well. I think it's so important to be vulnerable, and I think you're a person that can really say that, how much good it's brought to your life, since you've started writing and being vulnerable. I mean, you do talk about things that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about, but I think I love reading your post, but I think it gives people, when you're more open to, sharing things with other people feel more open to share things with you. And I think that's when it becomes easier to create connections in that way. I think nowadays with social media and everyone being super judgy, I think it's so hard to have that. And it's so important for us to let that guard down, because I think it inspires other people to do the same. And I know you have done that for me.
So final question. It's twofold. So what's the best career advice you've been given? And what's the best life advice you've been given? And then we'll pass that on.
Okay.
Or, the best career and life advice that you could give right now. Either one, take your pick.
Okay, I think the best advice that I've gotten is to be dangerous. Best career advice, I think, is to, it is a bit cliche, but I think to be dangerous, to take the risks, and you're never going to know if it works out until you do it. So it might be a bit simple, but I think it genuinely, once you listen to it and you follow it, I think it can be great advice. And life advice, I think that not everything has to make sense right now. A friend once told me, I think I was trying to, explain everything that I was doing in a hectic way because I wanted to prove to myself that it made sense. And I crave that a lot. I know I crave that a lot. I know a lot of people do as well. But yeah, I think you don't have to have an explanation and make everything make sense. Not just career-wise, but just focus on yourself and do what makes you feel good. Yeah, I think sometimes things only, click in hindsight, and that's okay. I think that would be my life advice.
All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to check out Laura's work, her professional Instagram is at lauramp.nutri, and her business for my São Paulo-based listeners is at eat.bodo. I'll leave them on the show notes. She also has a Substack called Another Recipe.
Yes.
So I'll leave all of her links and contact information in the show notes. Do you want to plug anything else?
No, I'm just super glad that we did this. I love being a part of your little series, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
All right, so if you have a sexy job and you want to chat about it, reach out at sexyjobsjulia@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review. And if you want to check out more of my work, visit Novus newsletter at julianovus.substack.com. Thank you so much.
Bye.